November turned out to be a massive month for Nintendo, with the release of not only Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, but also the much-anticipated Pokémon remakes Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. The duo marks the third time Nintendo has revisited previous installments in the series, and they're reimagined for a new generation. The enhanced versions sport a massive overhaul that borrows heavily from the features and innovations first seen in last year's Pokémon X and Y, making the pair the most advanced remakes to date. Set in the Hoenn region, you step into the role of a young trainer who just recently moved to Little Root Town from the Johto region, the setting of the previous games Gold and Silver. After selecting your starter Pokémon companion, you set off into the wild to become the latest trainer with the dream of becoming a true champion. Along the way, you get caught up in the feud between two rival factions, Team Magma and Team Aqua, who each seek to fulfill their group's aspirations. As you travel from town to town in hopes of challenging each of the 8 gym leaders, you're occasionally forced from your primary goal of becoming a Pokémon master by these narrative elements. Unlike in X and Y, where it felt like the pacing came to a crawl at several points, most notably the opening frame, Omega Ruby advances forward at a steady pace. There's still a section where you'll veer off course for a good chunk of time, but otherwise, it feels like you're always making progress. It sometimes feels difficult to move on from each location, since the new visual updates to the towns and routes help immerse you more in this classic adventure. The original games haven't aged well visually, but the redone graphics derived from X and Y's aesthetic really pay off. And compared to the original versions, it's clear more work has gone into making each town feel like its own. This is a really beautiful game, and Omega Ruby puts X and Y's visual engine to far better use by pushing it further to craft more diverse-looking locales. It's not just the visuals either. A lot of effort went into refining and updating almost every mechanic found not only in the original GBA versions, but some of the newer ones introduced in X and Y. Many new features were thrown in, like the ability to sneak around by gently pressing on the analog pad. By doing this, it's possible to sneak up on wild Pokémon that now visually appear on screen in certain areas, like grass or water. It's a welcomed addition that really adds to the sense of capturing Pokémon in the wild, and is a far better component than relying strictly on random encounters. Though there are still random encounters in the game, it feels like their frequency is greatly toned down in an effort to encourage players to utilize the new sneaking mechanic. It also feels like there are fewer forced encounters with trainers along each route than in previous outings, and you're given ample opportunity to avoid them if you're sneaky enough. It all goes towards improving the overall pacing of the game by preventing portions from becoming stagnant to the point of boredom in past iterations. Despite this increased freedom, we never felt like we were neglecting our Pokemon's individual progress. Courtesy of the EXP share introduced in X and Y, you can keep your active roster appropriately leveled up to handle each new area without feeling overwhelmed. Of course, if you prefer a grind, you can disable this function. And though it's still possible to steamroll through much of the game by having a single overpowered Pokemon, this time it feels like the team we assembled was put to good use. We found ourselves rotating out members to handle certain gyms with ease rather than relying on one single Pokemon, leading to a far more balanced experience that stayed faithful to the nature of the games. It wasn't until the Elite Four and the showdown with the champion that our team was pushed to the brink, so overall the game's a bit on the easy side. This also extends to the game's numerous puzzles, which are hardly taxing on the mind, even if they're still fun to solve. Another way the game keeps up the brisk pace, as well as keeping things less tedious, is the occasional option to quick travel to certain points in order to advance the story. At key junctures in the narrative, an NPC involved in the current plot point will offer you the option to follow them to a far-off destination. Upon arrival, you can easily advance to the next part of the game. The alternative is a lengthy backtracking sequence that would potentially chew up a lot of time and bog down the experience. The excessive backtracking used to serve as part of the grind, to keep your Pokemon leveled up, and a means to capture more Pokemon, but it's out of place in this iteration. And speaking of capturing Pokemon, there are tons of them in this game. Initially, you're restricted to a set amount available in the region, but after completing the 8th gym, you can upgrade your Pokédex to the National Edition. From what we've seen, this is the most complete collection of Pokemon found in any installment. This is sure to delight those who are seeking to fill out their Pokédex. While past remakes have often felt like they were withholding certain Pokemon to sell future releases, it feels like there was no holding back. Aside from catching Pokémon, defeating gym leaders, and saving the world from the evil plans of Team Magma, there are side attractions to keep you distracted, like visiting the Safari Zone. There's also the return of the Pokémon Contest, where players can team up with their Pokémon to compete in fashion contests to win fabulous prizes. One of these awards is perhaps the coolest prize in the history of gaming: Cosplay Pikachu. Yes, you can swap out this Pikachu's outfit to not only alter his appearance to your liking, but change out one of his moves to make him a formidable opponent in battle. There are also a few mini-games that return from X and Y. Super Training allows you to improve an individual Pokemon's specific attributes. Pokemon Ami lets you strengthen your bond with your Pokemon to increase latent abilities, and the Player Search system lets you easily keep track of other players who connect with you, either locally or over the internet. And just like in X and Y, both the local and online functionality is very accessible and runs very smoothly to deliver another stellar multiplayer experience. Not all of the changes come without hiccups. X and Y tried to offer a greater degree of precision when it came to movement, but the overall world was still designed to function like a grid. This time around, you have even more freedom when it comes to getting around. It feels like the game is trying to break free of its archaic restrictions. However, one thing still trips it up: the layout of the geography. While surfing around on the open seas is amazing, trying to navigate tight, blocky corridors is sometimes annoying. It's never serious enough that it affects your experience, but it's a clear sign that maybe it's time the developers consider opening up the environments even further. Another new element that lends itself well to the sense of exploration, but is ultimately underutilized, is the ability to freely fly around the world map. Like the traditional fly mechanic that lets you instantly warp between previously visited spots, which is still present, you can now mount your Pokémon and take to the skies to seamlessly explore a fully rendered 3D environment. Unfortunately, this ability isn't available until very late in the game, though it gets some decent use in the post-game content. And there is significant post-game content in Omega Ruby, including an entire extra story component known as Delta Chapter. Teased after the ending credits, if you start up your game again after completing the story, you'll start a brand new chapter of the game with more powerful Pokémon to battle an even greater threat to the world. Not to mention, there are potential references to upcoming content Nintendo might have planned as DLC. Omega Ruby feels like it clocks in a bit on the short side at well under 20 hours to complete the main story, but there's a lot of stuff to do on the side, plus the post-game content. The core adventure might not have as much soul as something like Red and Blue or Gold and Silver, but it's a solid RPG nonetheless. It takes the best parts of the original game, enhances them with X and Y's engine, and then makes improvements on top of that. It's by no means flawless, as there's clearly room for these games to improve and evolve into something even more refreshing.